Does God ever not make sense to you? What do you do when God makes a decision and it just does not make sense? You know, sometimes a 35-year-old father of two will die. And at the funeral, 10 people get saved. And so you say, okay, well, you know, God makes sense. 10 people are now going to be forever with him in eternity. But sometimes a 7-year-old little girl dies and nobody gets saved. What do you do then? In Genesis chapter 49, we see the end of Jacob's life. And the whole point of Jacob was that the Messiah was going to come through him. And so he's got 12 sons. One of those sons he gets to bless, and he's choosing who Jesus is going to come through eventually. And so there's an obvious choice. You got Joseph, who's like the favorite son, the firstborn of his favorite wife, the one he's really supposed to be with, right? Until he gets tricked by Leah and concubines and whatever. There's an obvious choice. He saves the world and everything like that. So he starts the blessing and he says, Judah, you're my firstborn son from Leah. Yeah, you might say he's got a pretty good chance, right? He says, you went onto your father's bed and you defiled it. You slept with one of my concubines. You're out. He speaks to Simeon and Levi. He says, you killed the whole town of Shechem. You guys are out. Now it goes to the fourth-born son, Judah, who, if you read Genesis chapter 38, there's some bad stuff about this guy. He says, the Messiah is going to come through you. What? Why did you pick Judah, of all people? Have you even read Genesis chapter 38? It isn't good. You got Joseph sitting right there. Sometimes God does stuff, and it will never make sense to you. Like, you'll go through your whole life, you'll go to your grave, and you'll be like, wait a minute, this still doesn't make sense. Why did you do this? Why did you let this happen? Listen, we cannot understand the ways of God. He says his ways are higher than our ways. His thoughts are greater than ours. There are some times in life that we literally just have to trust him. It's faith. When you get to heaven, when I get to heaven, one day, this stuff is going to make sense. But until then, there are going to be some times that don't make sense. God did bless Joseph. God did a lot of great things in Joseph's life, but he didn't get everything he wanted. And I'm sure he went to his grave thinking, wow, what went wrong? Why wasn't the Messiah to come through me? And the bottom line is, this wasn't God's will. God's will is it would come through Judah, that Jesus would come through Judah, and he did. Whatever it is in your life that you're saying, this just does not add up. It doesn't. Not to us on the earth. But you have to trust that there is a God in heaven that loves you, that's going to work all this thing out. And it will make sense one day when you see him face to face.